Good morning, Alex. Welcome to Eva. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. So in my life, I had a lot of struggles when I was younger. Um, sort of, I was labelled as a naughty child because I would act up and sort of behave out of what was deemed normal at the time. Um, and it did knock confidence quite a bit. I went through four schools by the time I was around nine. So it's quite a difficult sort of time. I've had an amazing mum who sort of fought for me throughout. Um, and sort of when I got to the stage of actually getting a diagnosis at the age of nine, I was told I had Asperger's syndrome. So with Asperger's, we try to function sort of because I didn't know any coping mechanisms at the time. We try to function and look at how other people behave and reciprocate it. It's something called mirroring. To make ourselves feel like we're normal, the same as everyone else. So when I went through certain schools which were more with young people with behavioural difficulties, I would then mirror said behaviour, and anything they would do, I would then do two times worse to think, oh, that's normal. Or sort of someone runs off, I run home, which sadly that's a risk assessment nightmare. but yeah, and that's sort of where I started. Once I got diagnosed, I went to a school which gave me the right support, the right coping mechanisms, went into mainstream, and then I sort of things have gone up and up from there. Really, it's sort of where I am now is reflective of getting that support in place to develop and to flourish where I am now.
Growing up, what was school life like?
I guess with school life for me, it was difficult at the time, and then as soon as I went to high school, which was with the John Frost High School, they were amazing. Sort of it managed to break me down from where I was very regimented, had to do my routine, and I could not deviate from that. I was put into mainstream at times, and then as I got more comfortable spending more time there, doing lessons independently. So I used to be 2-to-1 risk assessed, and then it was one person, and then from that, I was then able to do things independently. And again, it was sort of learning how to talk to people, because I couldn't have a conversation with you. I could speak in front of 1,000 people, would not bother me, and as long as I knew what I was saying, because it was regimented, structured. But when it was making friends, I couldn't do it because I didn't know what to talk about. And that was, I think, the turning point for me was building those coping mechanisms, and sort of being able to develop and, as I say, exposure camp. So I get myself used to these different situations so I can cope in them.
What's your thoughts on special provision within schools?
I think it is invaluable. I think for young people, getting the right support they need is everything. Sort of, it can be the difference between someone being written off as a naughty child when actually, with the right support, I became one of the 8 highest achievers for my year in school, which I can only say is to the testament of the support workers that I had, who were there to help me and develop me, so I was able to take those sort of stressful situations in my stride.
At what point in your life did you realise your life was different to others around you?
I guess from an earlier perspective, probably earlier years, maybe 6 or 7, the difficult years when I acted up, sort of it was aggression, it was sort of swearing, etc. It was not the same as what other people were like. But I guess it's sort of, I guess not as much being different, it was just being a bit unique, because I was, again, it's like slightly sort of had my own sort of, what would be quirky sort of traits, I guess would be the best way of saying it. And yeah, my mum actually explained to me through a book called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night that I had Asperger's, because it was all about the different aspects of the structure, the routine, and sort of things that I could remember, which sometimes are very extreme things, but I could just remember them for years. And fixations like collections, so with me it was bond cards, football cards, cottages, anything, eggs, you name it. It was just sort of collecting, and sadly Mum had to store quite a lot of stuff there. But yeah, I guess it was things like that, just the quirky things, and then when Mum explained to me through the book, I think that was when I understood that I was slightly different.
Alex, can you tell us about the amazing charity work you've done?
Okay, so at one point with school I was excluded because I ran home after a meltdown. and sort of that was going to be a lot of time that I wasn't really doing a lot at home. So Mum mentioned, let's do something constructive with the time, and sort of we talked about maybe starting a little business or something. So I started with the support of Mum, Alex's handy hanging baskets. So we had £1 for every basket went to charity, and the tips as sort of progressed started going to charity too. So we raised for a different charity every year. So Macmillan, St David's Foundation, Alzheimer's Society. So yeah, we do a different charity every year. But it was good because every time I was out in the garden, it was the structure right. These are the different plants. You've got the trailers on the sides. You've got a nice fuchsia geranium in the middle. And it was just nice to see. So we'd even do a week's guarantee. Sort of if anything died in the week, bring it back to us and we'll replace it. Yeah, it was good.
Okay, so what tips would you give our listeners on gardening?
Of course. I guess one that I could always take from Alan Titchmarsh, of course, is sort of when you've got root-bound plants, especially when they're coming from B&Q, for instance, or whichever garden centre, just teasing the roots helps encourage them grow. It's always good. We always used put loads of slug pellets around the baskets just to protect them in the early stages. Or just watering really, keeping on top of them, don't overdo it. As long as you keep them in a good place, they'll start growing and turn out lovely.
Why the RAF?
Well, I joined the Royal Air Force Air Cadets when I was younger. I joined it around 14, 15, because we, again, with the friendships, I was struggling, so we looked at sort of different clubs that I could do. When I was younger, I went through a few different clubs because none of them quite fitted me. And then me and Mum had a look at the Royal Air Force Air Cadets because they had a squadron in Clean. And from that point, I went into it. I was a bit shy, apprehensive to start with, and then I just built my confidence and it got better and better. So I was able to talk to people. I started doing really well. I progressed through all the ranks. I got to Cadet Warrant Officer. I got Best Cadet in the UK. And I got so many adventures. So I went to Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri, on sort of a cadet camp. I went to South Africa doing anti-poaching talks for young people in schools with rhinos, ivory trade. I had some amazing experiences, and it just sort of built up my ability to be independent, and I enjoyed it. So it felt like the natural progression from the Air Cadets was the Royal Air Force.
How did you feel when the RAF said they might not take you?
I think it was very demoralising. Again, sort of achieving so much. By that point, I Best Cadet in the UK. I'd done so well with the cadets, like Gold Duke of Edinburgh. I've met Prince William, had that privilege. It does make you feel a little bit worthless because it sort of felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. I was quite demoralised at the time, and it was difficult. And I had some amazing support from family, and I was also working with the Military Preparation College in Newport, so I developed my military understanding skills and sort of public services knowledge of uniform public services. And it was a massive knock, but I took it in my stride, had to go away. I focused on something else. So I did public services level 3 and then sort of saw where that took me really. And then they changed because it was at the time it was no one with any form of Asperger's could join the forces. And then 2 years later they changed it to case by case.
Who or what inspires you to keep trying for the RAF?
Well, I've had a very supportive mum. I've had a very supportive family. I think at the time I finished with the Military Preparation College. I went and did Public Services Level 3 in college because I knew I was going to be in some form of public service, I think, from just how I am as a person. And then as soon as I heard that it was case-by-case basis, I thought, why not reapply? Just sort of, it's one of those things I thought, I don't want to get to the point in life where I have any regrets and feel like I wish I did try it. Because even if I got to the point again of didn't get it, at least I can say, well, I tried. So I thought, give it a go. What do I have to lose? I did really well on interviews and passed it with flying colours. I got my start date. It was a challenge. I won't lie. It was very challenging for me at times. But I think it sort of, I kept at it. Again, I had an amazing mum who was sort of listening to me at all times. All of my worries, all of my concerns, supported me. And then, I got through it and sort of And I've shown the RAF what I'm able to do, and now all of the forces are case-by-case basis. So no one's effectively written off just because they have a label, because with that label, it can be a massive strength for an organisation, and I'm hopefully show young people that with that label, it could be their superpower. I use condition, not disability, because I don't want people to think that it stops them being able to do things.
Who is your hero and why?
Well, that's 100% going to be Mum, always. I wouldn't be who I am without her. Honestly, Mum has supported me for everything, sort of going through the hard times of being told I was going to be in the youth offenders institute by the time I was 16, to where I am now, having the privilege of being awarded the Pride of Britain Awards, and all of the other accolades, because I would not be who I am today without my amazing Mum.
When did you first find out you were nominated for a Pride of Britain award?
Well, when I first heard, it was a little bit out of the blue. So the Prince's Trust, I was doing my employability-wise as I was going through my RAF application. So they were helping with my CV building, interview techniques, all of the academic side really of joining the Air Force, whereas with the Military Preparatory College was all the military aspects. So I did an online course. This was sort of in the harsher end of COVID, when we just stayed at home, we couldn't go anywhere. So it was online classes. It was 8 weeks with different, again, CVs was 1 week, employability skills the next week, personal statements. And from that, a lot of the young people that I went on with, for instance, because we had about 30 young people with a Prince's Trust member of staff sort of hosting it. No one had their cameras on. It was always blank. A lot of people struggled to engage, but with me, I was always camera on, always smiling, keeping positive, and sort of engaging with it. And they sort of said I was very inspirational for the other young people who sort of maybe lacked a little bit of confidence. And then they started putting their cameras on. And I talked to them about my story from where I was to where I am now. I'm all about supporting people, and they put me forward for the Prince's Trust Young Achiever of the year for 2022. I won that for Wales, and I was sort of okay, thank you. And then to my surprise, then they put me up then for the Pride of Britain. Could not tell me anything about it, and then I heard a couple of weeks before the actual event that they wanted me to interview with the Pride of Britain panel, so the production executives, that sort of thing, directors, as well as sort of Prince's Trust head of communications, and it just sort of, it came out of nowhere. I was a bit blown away, to be honest.
How did you feel?
Yeah, I think it was very excited, I guess, apprehensive. I always feel a bit sort of, do I deserve this? This is such a huge accolade. You see it on telly every year, and you think, am I really deserving of having one of these myself? But yeah, it was a really, really humbling experience, I think, going through it. And I think I struggle to look at sort of my successes. I'm very much achieved it. Brilliant, thank you. On to the next thing. I struggle to dwell on it. So when I had a chance of reflecting on things and talking with the producers, it does take me back sometimes how far my family, me and Mum, have sort of come with the difficult times to where I am now.
Meeting all the stars at the ceremony was a fantastic achievement. How did it feel when actor Idris Elba read out a message from King Charles?
I was absolutely speechless. To be honest with you, I was crying throughout the whole thing. I ended up having the Strictly cast pat me on the back. I didn't realise at the time, but I was sobbing wreck at the time. But sort of, it was a really, really, really humbling experience. Sort of seeing, I didn't know if Idris was going to be there or not, because I did sort of with Asperger's, I went a bit sort of extra. I checked every single name tag on the tables to see if he was there, and he wasn't there. So I thought, he's not here. So I didn't know he was my surprise. He only came to see me do my award, and then he had to go. But yeah, and again, that was a shock for me. I was speechless a little bit for a minute, just taking it back. But when the words from the King came out at the end, it was,
As a James Bond fan, did you get any inch in the green room afterwards?
Well, I did ask a cheeky question. I said, so, when are you becoming 007? And we had a good bit of banter, to be fair. Idris was so down to earth. But yeah, it was sort of he talked a little bit, but sort of slightly declined to answer the question. But sort of he was amazing.
Where do you think Alex would be 30 years from now?
I think for me, the biggest thing is it's my privilege to inspire people. So no matter where I am, I hope to be inspiring young people. Again, my catchphrase is never let a label define you, and I'm very much passionate about that. So if I've inspired one person, as my mum said, I'm using her quote a little bit now, I've made my difference. So as long as I can hopefully make the world a little bit of a better place, whether that be down the line sort of government-wise, or whether that be down the line supporting young people in any other sort of role, something around those lines is where I can see myself going.
What do you fear most?
What do I fear most? Difficult. I guess a little bit of failure, because I am a perfectionist in how I am with things. I don't like to fail, but I also now accept the fact I'm human. Sort of, I used to be so adamant that I was getting, even with my exams, I'm not getting below a B, and sort of it would be very much I put extra pressure on myself. I'm still guilty of it today, but I think my biggest fear, I guess, is the fact that I being too much of a perfectionist, because the world is not a perfect place, and I just need to respect the fact that I can only do what I can do.
Alex, what's your favourite music?
Oh, okay. I'm more old sort of older music, I guess, is where, so it would be Queen, Yellow, I quite like. I like a bit of ABBA now and again, courtesy of Mum. Used to have that in the car. I like a bit of everything. I like a bit of classical, I like some modern stuff. Ed Sheeran, for instance. I'm very, very varied. I like a bit of everything.
Alex, what's your favourite song?
Mr. Blue Sky, always. First song I ever learned on piano. And keeps me positive.
You are granted one wish. What would it be?
One wish. I guess it would be to live in a world where people weren't judged by their labels. I think to be in a world where everyone was treated equally. That would be a world that I'd love to live in, and that would be my one wish.
Our last question: what words of encouragement can you give people and their families struggling every day with learning disabilities and autism?
I think, as I can say for Mum, and because she was told this, and I agree with it takes a very special person to be an autism parent, because there's a lot of challenges that Mum had to face with me, and she was absolutely amazing. And there's so many parents who've had to suffer in silence because they haven't had the support they need, and I want to hopefully give them that hope that they are doing an amazing job and things will get better, and hopefully I can inspire their young people to continue to achieve and not let labels define them.
Thank you, Alex, for an amazing interview. We wish you all the best for the future from everyone at Devo.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.